Hello and welcome to the Top Order podcast. Stu and Raj here on a midweek evening in New Zealand to look back at the final few games of the Super 8 phase and ahead to the semi-finals, which we now know will feature India versus England and South Africa versus Afghanistan after their thrilling win against Bangladesh this afternoon. All of that and more coming up right after this. So Raj, we're about to dive into the games from the past couple of days, but just quickly before we start, because you weren't on our last recording, I sort of want to talk to you a little bit about these games from the Super 8 phase, because I remember you saying at the start of this tournament that you were finding some of the cricket, was one of your big hot takes in our first World Cup episodes, saying that you found some of that cricket in those pool play stages pretty tough on those slow pitches, bit of a grind to watch. But definitely over the last week or so, the scores, although a couple of these scores actually in these last few days have been a bit low, but at least those games have been, big, close finishes. The scores seems to have moved towards your sweet spot during this round. Is that upped your level of enjoyment of these games?
Yeah, look, 100%, because obviously, my barometer on whether games are good is the world view. But I think it's been much more entertaining in the Super 8s phase, and I don't think that is necessarily to do with the teams that are in it. I think that the pitches and the grounds that they're playing on and the weather that they're in is a bit more conducive to 2020 cricket. But definitely much more exciting. And then you have those games which are in that sweet spot, and then when you have the occasional game like the one today, Afghanistan, Bangladesh, that is that low-scoring thriller, it does actually have that sort of exclamation point where that is exciting, but it's not the norm every single game. I've definitely enjoyed the Super 8s phase from a watchability perspective much better.
Very good, very good. I'm glad that we're moving up in the pleasuring Raj stakes of the T20 World Cup.
Yes,
let's move to I'd like us to cover the games. We'll look back a little bit at the games, but we're going to do it with quite a lens on the semi-finals and how that's all going to shape out. But I do think it's worth talking a bit about this India-Australia game, which, for Australia, obviously proved to be what, it was a game that looked like it was going to have to be must-win. And then at times during that Afghanistan-Bangladesh game, it looked like maybe they might sneak home anyway. There was the threat of rain. You talked about weather just before. There's been the threat of rain on a lot of these games, and this one in particular, I'm sure Australian fans were looking at the weather before the game because it didn't look great. But thankfully, even though it did turn up early in India's innings, we did see a full game and a pretty exciting one at that. And I think the place to start there really is with Rohit Sharma because he made his intent fairly clear straight away, and which is actually something he's done for a while now in the white ball formats. He's obviously set the platform in the ODI World Cup and the way he went about things. And I know he hasn't really got going so far in this World Cup until today, but the intent has always been something that's there. And I mean, what a difference it makes when he gets going at the top, Raj.
100%. The as you said, the intent just to take on Stark, who has been a devastating bowler with the white ball. Definitely, when it comes to sort of knockout competition, he absolutely took the ball by the horns and put him to the sword, allowing that catapult through the power play. There, I thought he was incredible. There was what was the over off Stark?
29.
It was 20 something. He absolutely took him down, hit the ball with low risk to great parts of the ground, and there were some massive ones throughout his whole innings. There, he was very, very good. I was very impressed with the Rohit Sharma's batting, in particular. Just to switch over to Australia's bowling, just before you go on, I think that their bowling and fielding, this is the second sort of performance. The performance they had against Afghanistan wasn't great, especially in the field as well. They'll be a bit more. They'll be disappointed that they let runs through, especially the sort of high economy rates that they had throughout the bowling innings. But look, what did you make of that side of the ball for Australia?
Yeah, look, I mean, we all called for Mitchell Starc should have played against Afghanistan, and then suddenly when Rohit Sharma's hit those 2 sixes over cover to start that 29 run over, and then the huge one over wide long on, followed it up with a massive one onto the roof off Pat Cummins, and yeah, we were maybe sitting there thinking, oh, did we make the wrong decision? I still stand by my comments there that I think Stark was the play against Afghanistan to try and pick up those early wickets. But yeah, look, I mean, I think the thing is with Rohit, he just made it so tough for them. Like when you get stuck into Stark, he can go for runs, and he does seem to find it hard to really bring it back in that over. To be fair to him, he did come back later on in the innings and picked up Sky, sort of dragged the run rate back a little bit. But I mean, you talked about the intent there with Rohit. He just sets up the perfect platform for everyone else to play with. When he gets going, it meant that Sky comes in with freedom, Dubé comes in with freedom, Hardik, that shot that Hardik hit, one of the most remarkable shots that I've ever seen, that 360 swivel after he'd just done a top spin forehand over cover the ball before, or during the over before. So I was watching that and I sort of had to rewind it 3 or 4 times to kind of figure out what was going on, because it was just remarkable.
Yeah, no, I mean, sorry, I took a little bit of your rhythm away there talking about the Australian bowlers, but 100%. India is one of those teams that, you take wickets against a team and usually things get easier. But with India, you take wickets, and if nothing else, it actually gets a bit harder if you're sending in Sky, Dubé, Hardik all the way down to Ravindra Jadeja there at the bottom there. They're going from both ends. If Rohit's going, if Virat's going from one end, and you've got all these support players coming around at the other end, who do you bowl to? What are your plans? It sort of goes out the window, and that's sort of what we saw there. It could have been much more than 205. They did a good job to sort of limit it to that and bring it back towards the end there. But very, very good batting lineup. I don't think that that'll be debated anywhere.
Definitely not. I mean, and it does seem like they, I think we talked about it in our last episode. It seems like they are starting to all hit some form. Virat, maybe nice if he could get going, but the rest of them, they are looking super ominous for this semi-final. I know India fans kind of start to get to these knockout phases and get a little bit nervous. We've seen it in some of the YouTube comments over the last few videos that we've done. We've seen everyone going, don't call us the favourites, don't get excited just yet, But I think it's certainly as a neutral, they are looking very dominant. But Australia were going good. They looked well in charge. David Warner out early was unfortunate. Raj, is that the end of his Australian career?
Look, it sounds like it. By all reports, there is a story up on Cricinfo that says that he has confirmed his retirement. But look, with AI and everything these days, until I hear it out of his mouth, I'll wait until I hear that. But I think that might be the end of his international career, definitely. He got a good one early on. Arshdeep Singh, again, very good with the new ball. He really gets that ball to swing early on, which is the key as a left armer. We've seen with the likes of, when we look at New Zealand, Bolt has just been devastating when he can get that ball to do a little bit at the beginning. Arshdeep Singh was able to do that as well and take wickets early on, that one of Warner being quite impressive. I found in general the highlights package, I didn't watch the full game, unfortunately. The highlights package I saw, it looked to me that India bowled a lot shorter than Australia did. And if you look at it, definitely in the power play, that was the difference with Rohit, was just able to get on that front dog and put a lot of those ones away, where the likes of Head, all throughout his innings, a lot of his shots looked to be going from the back foot, especially the boundaries anyway, across the line. So that was a difference between the bowlers. But look, I there was a period there where I thought maybe Australia's got a chance, but I think that, India had it under control for the majority of that innings, I feel.
Yeah, I think for me, the moment where it turned a little bit, where it turned, I think a lot actually, is Kuldeep, coming on,
100%.
but thanks to a remarkable catch from Axar to get Marsh. I mean, that was something pretty special on the boundary there, jumping up, grabs it. That goes over his head, goes for 6. And Australia, again, kind of get that momentum. Marsh and Head were really rolling along. But, Kuldeep, we talked a little bit about him in the last episode as well. He's someone I just love watching bowl. The way he kind of totally foxed Maxwell when Maxwell came down the crease.
Yeah.
He just adds so much to their bowling. And, again, a lot has been said about the way he's changed his pace and added pace over the last, year, 18 months. But, yeah, I think the thing is, when you've got him in the bag to pick up wickets and you've got someone else like Jasprit Bumrah, who you can just absolutely bank on in all situations. Yeah, I mean, it means that every part of their bowling attack sort of has its little role now, and that it's working beautifully.
If I could just explore that one a little bit deeper, obviously he wasn't getting selected at the beginning of the tournament, Kuldeep, and they were sort of had a horses for courses approach. What do you make of how they're starting to use him through this stage of the tournament and on these pitches?
Yeah, well, look, I think that they've probably realised. I mean, well, those pitches are spinning. They were obviously in the US where situations were a little bit different. Those pitches weren't great, but they were. They it was maybe to do with seam and bounce and kind of tennis bally bounce that maybe did suit the seamers a little bit better. Look, I mean, I still think he would have done just fine there. They're embarrassment of riches. They're leaving someone like Siraj on the bench. So you've got a good bowler to come in. But I think going forward, if we think about the two pitches that the semi-finals are on in particular, they were pitches that were in New Zealand's group. They were pitches that really, really aided spin, and they were pitches that were pretty tough to bat on. Obviously, it's been a couple of weeks since then, so we don't know how they're going to play, whether they've improved. Obviously, the weather's been a bit changeable around thunderstorms and stuff around the Caribbean. So, yeah, it's not being on the ground there, it's hard to know what the pitches are like. But, yeah, I would expect that Kuldeep will be a feature for as long as India is in this tournament, because he's just playing such a key role picking up those wickets. And like I said before, when you've got other bowlers that you can rely on to keep it tight when you need to, Axar and Jadeja and Bumrah, when Bumrah's not taking wickets himself, you know that he's at least going to keep it tight. And it means that you can almost have Kuldeep as that, it's not secret weapon, but, kind of a wild card that even if he maybe goes for a few boundaries, he's probably going to bowl you a ball or two that's going to get you a wicket, and that's worth it. Should we move to India's opponent in the second semi-final, England? Because I've written in my notes that they look to be hitting top gear now, but I'm fascinated to get your thoughts, because I've sort of thought that to myself. They look to be firing. Rashid's looking really good. Their opening partnership, Salt and Buttler. I mean, Buttler just went chaos in that game against the USA. They cruised into that game. They clearly had a plan that Buttler said it after the game. They wanted to finish top spot in that group. It didn't quite work out because of South Africa also winning, which was out of their control. But I think on the other side of this, playing devil's advocate, you could argue that they haven't really beaten hardly anyone in this tournament that is of names. They've beaten associate nations, and when they've done that, they've beat them really well and really convincing, probably with the West Indies game being their defining win, I suppose, of this tournament. And, that's the one I think that you look to and go, okay, well, that's the one that gets you to this point. But, yeah, where are you at with England? I mean, are they a shot at all to beat India?
Look, I don't think they'll be the favourite at the bookmakers, but the thing with 2020 cricket especially, actually even the one-day World Cup as well, form goes out the window when it comes to this part of the tournament. It's who's got the bottle on the day. England have had a up and down campaign. That Scotland sort of rain affected game at the start would have kind of scarpered their plans a little bit to get a little bit of momentum into the tournament, and then it felt like it feels like they've been pushing shit uphill the whole tournament, really trying to get to where they want to be, which is in the semi-finals right now. But like you said, that victory against the West Indies is a blueprint for them. I think that's something that they'll want to follow going forward. The stumble against South Africa will worry them, because I think that they'll be disappointed that they didn't chase down that 160 odd. But they've got momentum going into this, right? They've won 2 of their last 3. They're coming up against India, and it really is just a one shot sort of who's going to be better on the day. And England have the tools to do that. It was good to see Chris Jordan. Was it Binksy on the last podcast?
Yeah.
He said, get some wickets and make a real impact, because he's someone who I thought prior to the tournament was a bit perhaps out of place in this squad, but he's definitely proven me wrong there. But look, it's a straight shot for me. I'm very excited by that game. I think it'll be good to watch as long as there's no rain around. because we don't have a reserve day for that. But yeah, what do you make of England's form so far?
Well, yeah, I mean, again, credit to Binksy. He's not on this podcast, so we can actually give him some credit that, yeah, he called for Chris Jordan to come in and 4 wickets and 5 balls is quite the impact, and to get a hat trick, those final 3 wickets, to get bowled LB and then send the middle stump flying for the hat trick ball is sort of exactly what you dream of, and I actually think it's quite amazing to have had 3 hat tricks in just a few days. I mean, sometimes you obviously don't see them for a long, long time. So quite remarkable that that's happened. But I think the guys, that really are going to define England, and you talked about it before with the blueprint for how they're going to go, it is this opening pair. I mean, they're so devastating when they get going. Buttler, look, they made short work of the USA. We probably don't need to dwell too much on that game. On the previous episode, we talked a bit about the USA and the development they look to have made during this World Cup, and what things might look like for them going forward. So I won't repeat all of that. But Buttler and Salt, Salt just enjoyed himself at the other end in this game against the USA, because but they got themselves in the first couple of overs. Then Buttler walks down the wicket, hits 104 metre 6 over the sight screen, and then then it was just all on. Hit 5 sixes in an over off Harmeet to boost the run rate and kind of put them in pole position, I guess, on net run rate terms to make the top spot if South Africa had slipped up. So yeah, I really think that's going to be the marker for them. If those two can get going, then England's a huge chance, because one, they can chase down anything, or they can set a big score. And I think I'm really fascinated to see how India will use Bumrah, because they've had lots of different ways that they like to use him, right? Sometimes they use him in the power play. Sometimes they like to hold him back because he's so good at the death. I wonder if for this game in particular, they might maybe take a bit more of a gamble and say, look, we've got to, it's so important to try and get one of these two, if not both of them, in this power play phase. And yeah, it's definitely that power play, I think, for both sides is probably the thing that I'm looking forward to the most out of that game.
I'm also looking forward to how India bat, if I'm honest, because I feel like India have the ability to take this game away with the bat, regardless of how they bowl. It's their innings where they bat. If they can put up 180, 190 plus against this England side, and then they will be in the driver's seat. I think they'll have the complete momentum in terms of, we know that they just need to break that opening partnership and get into the Johnny Bairstow, Moeen Ali, Harry Brook middle order, which seems to be jumping around a little bit in terms of who comes in where, depending on the situation. But I think that is the key that I'm going to look at. How India go about it. Do they have someone that goes out there and tries to set a platform like Virat seems to be trying to do, but can't quite find the right way to express himself, or just send Rohit out there and get 94 or 90 off 40 again and let the others bat around him and chip in where they can. It's very interesting, because I feel like they could go about it any which way that the innings sort of goes. So that's going to be the part I'm looking forward to anyway from that game.
Yeah, and look, I talked about it just before, that the pitches and the location of this game. This one is in Guyana, which, yeah, it's where New Zealand played Afghanistan, and I mean, I still have nightmares about that game. That was, so tough to face spin on that attack on that deck, and you would say that that's going to suit India, but again, I think it changes what. It might change the approach, and I think both teams haven't played in this area of during this World Cup, so they're going to have to get there pretty quickly and go, okay, what is a good score? Because I think that's what we saw, particularly in New Zealand's group. What undid sides is where they went, oh, we have to, we still have to try and get this score, or we have to try and target this score. Whereas if you set out, kind of like Afghanistan have done it, when we get to them, they seem to have known what is a good score on every single wicket that they've played on, and sort of batted to that tempo throughout their innings. And yeah, we just talked about how powerful that Indian start is, the intent and all of that. If it's a 140 pitch and they go out with that intent and suddenly they're 30 for 3, things could change very quickly. So yeah, fascinating encounter. Let's move on to the second semi-final, because the way that things, shake down, we went into the South Africa-West Indies game knowing that essentially that was going to be a quarterfinal. And ultimately, South Africa kept up their run of just winning close matches at this World Cup, which, again, is something we've talked about that hasn't been traditionally in their DNA at a World Cup. I think, before the game, Tristan Stubbs was quoted as saying, "We like making them tight." But then all the quotes from Aiden Markram afterwards were mainly about relief and how they tried to kill the game a fraction too early, and how that made it really tight and they were all really nervous. Raj, I think, again, traditionally, you've probably been the hardest to convince about South Africa being coming through when it matters most. Is this their year?
Look, I'm not convinced. If I'll be honest with you, look, all power to them. They've played really well over a sort of a period of time now, which is becoming significant, without actually sort of making that final step to actually winning the thing. Does it feel like they're building towards something? Sure, yes, it does. Is it going to be this World Cup? I don't know. I feel like that game against the West Indies. I know it was the West Indies, wasn't it?
Yeah.
They did win it. That's the end of the end. Bottom line is they did win it. However, I think if you were a South African fan watching that, you would have had heart palpitations a long way for a long period during that chasing innings, and it did feel like they made life difficult for themselves at stages. And really, some of the little flurries throughout that innings really helped them get to where they wanted to be, because there was sustained pressure for long periods of times, and then there was a release valve opened up every now and then. But look, do I think they can win it? No, I don't think they're going to get there this time. They may get to the final. Afghanistan's a hurdle they'll have to get through in a one-off match. But then I think, it might be a bit harder to win that final. And it's just going to come down to mental toughness. And the team, whichever team they play in that final, whether it's India or England, if they make the final, is going to have the edge on them from an experience point of view, playing in a big dance like that at a final. So that is important when it comes to this stage of the tournament. So that's my take on South Africa. Sorry, Stu, I haven't crossed the barrier yet. But obviously you're quite hot on them.
Oh, look, it's really funny. I mean, you mentioned little flurries. I really think that Moti over where Klaasen, one, it was a big over, 20 runs off the over, but it was really only one beautiful shot from Klaasen. I think he hit it straight down the ground. Lovely six, but then a couple of streaky boundaries. But it really did change. It really did help them in that game, because it put them in front. And every time I sort of think about this game, and I really can't get the vision of Rabada and Janssen colliding in the field out of my head, because it really felt like that was sort of going to be a microcosm for the whole performance from South Africa. They looked like, that looked like it was going to be a disaster. They were both just collapsed in a heap. And then, it comes down to the end of the game, and those two are the ones that are out in the middle after South Africa is collapsing in a heap. And, the two of them got that job done. Lovely cover drive from Kagiso Rabada, who bizarrely didn't bowl until the 18th over of that game, I think it was. I still don't understand that. People will say to me, Markram bowled his 4 overs up front, did a good job, matchups, debt, pitch, all of that kind of stuff. Doesn't make any sense to me. Just bowl your best bowlers. I don't know why you would not bowl your best bowlers, but anyway. And then Janssen.
Is that not the best example of a skipper just taking the ball and bowling 4 overs at the top of the inning?
Look, he did get Puran in, really early on. That was always going to be a crucial wicket for that game. So, fair play to him, and especially, I guess, to have the confidence to do that after he bowled the first over in the previous game, and I don't think it paid off at all. This game, he did it, and, fair play. He did put on a decent performance, Markram, but yeah, I still think waiting that long to bowl Rabada was bizarre.
So 2 questions for me just on the batting chase. It was a very there was a lot of chat on our Slack channel about this game as it was going on. Firstly, your thoughts on Reza Hendricks, and then also your thoughts on how did you go during that game? The flashpoint for me was when sort of David Miller when they lost his wicket, 5 for 93. I was like, oh boy, this could be interesting. How did you ebb and flow throughout that innings?
Yeah, well, look, Hendricks is a tough one, isn't it? Because before this World Cup, he's in great form. He's someone that looked like he could be a real contributor for them, but he just hasn't got going. I think he did get, I forget 30 or 40 or something in one of these games early on in the tournament, but it's been really, really rough for him in the last few games. And, I guess, you can always say strangled down the leg side. It sort of doesn't. You can almost forgive a batter for that, but when that sort of thing is happening, when you're on a bad run of form, you start to think, oh, this is just not my tournament. And I don't know what they're going to do. I think Rickleton's in the squad, isn't he?
Yeah.
So yeah, maybe they consider him, but I don't know. You probably at this point, with the fact that they're unbeaten, probably gives him another shot because he's just could, if he does get going, could be such a dominating force for them. But yeah, I mean, where did I get nervous in the chase? Kind of the whole, probably when they started going slow, to be honest. I think you sort of get in that situation where you're going well, and we saw it today for Bangladesh. You're going okay, and then it got to around, I think it was about 36 off 41, and it looked like the kind of equation where, okay, you just knock it around here, we have to do nothing tricky, and we're going to win this game. But Roston Chase came on, picked up that wicket, and suddenly the wickets just started to tumble. And when they're tumbling, it becomes, suddenly you go, okay, well, new batter has one or two balls to get in, and then suddenly, actually, we need more than a runner ball now, and who's going to hit these boundaries? And yeah, it just sort of felt like, it had that feeling of, okay, they're about to bottle this, but then they pulled it out. It was, very nervous times for them. That probably goes nicely into this Afghanistan-Bangladesh game because, honestly, we talk about ebbs and flows and, the tightness of the fixture of the West Indies, South Africa. It had nothing really on this Afghanistan-Bangladesh game, which was just bananas. Rain around the whole time, the
injuries.
Gulbadin, honestly. I mean, do we want to do that now? I think that was what do we say about Gulbadin? I hope he's okay.
I'll ask you. How did you see his injury? It's one of those ones, in other sports we talk about, injuries when there's no contact being quite serious. So what did you sort of make of this injury?
Well, yeah, look, I think realistically, if this had happened in the Premier League, it'd be definite yellow, maybe a red, straight red for diving. But the way he it was fantastic. Now that the fact that it didn't, if that had been the final moment of that game and it was decided by Duckworth Lewis, Stern, and they won by 2 runs because Gulbadin fell over and they didn't bowl another ball, then we might be having a different conversation. But the fact that it didn't really have an impact on the game. My favourite part of the whole thing is when he waves at Jonathan Trott. He waves at Jonathan Trott and goes, "Yep, I saw you," and then he just falls over. It's just so funny. Honestly, if anyone is watching us before they've watched the highlights of that game, then you must go and just pause the podcast and go and watch Gulbadin fall over because it was just splendid piece of shithousery and something you do not often see on a cricket field. The most remarkable thing again was that he then bowled the next the over after the rain delay.
Okay, I guess if I jump into this game, I'm going to go with a key performance first, if that's all right with you. I think the sort of real key performance on the day was the obviously we can talk about Gurbaz in a second, but I think that Rashid Khan was very good with the ball. When he came in, he had an immediate impact. Hard to score off, and took wickets at important times. He was sort of the key takeaway for me from a bowling perspective for Afghanistan. I think he was the deciding factor in the match.
Yeah, how's he not win Player of the Day? Or Player of the Day? I'm in kids mode, kids sport mode. Everyone gets Player of the Day. Player of the match. How's he? I just cannot believe because he's come in at the end and hit 3 important sixes. To be fair, he tried to hit every ball for 6 and missed 7 of them and hit missed 4 or 5 of them but the ones he did connect went out of the ground. So yeah, I'm stunned that he was not player of the match because, yeah, the like you said, the wickets that he got were at all the crucial times, and that turned, really every time it felt like Bangladesh are building a partnership, he went bang, and suddenly, they just kept crumbling.
And if we were to talk about Bangladesh, do you think they bottled this?
I actually think that in a way the fact that they had to chase it down so they had to chase this total down in 12.1 overs to make it. I think in a way that actually worked in Afghanistan's favour, because what happened is that was just close enough to give them a sniff to think, we can do this. Maybe we can do this. So yeah, it was enough of a carrot to go, let's have a crack. Let's have a real go at this. And it meant they lost early wickets. And it meant that, every time they started building a partnership, that they thought we better keep going because we can do this. And then you get to the point where I think what was it? They were about they needed 43 off 3.1 overs. It was 73 for 5 off 9, and Litton Das and Mamadullah were at the crease. And I sort of felt like at that point, for some reason, they gave up on that chase. I mean, I suppose they might have thought, and which proved correct, we lose one more and we're done. But they didn't. I think that they didn't. It didn't matter. Like, what does it matter to them if they lose the game and get knocked out, or just get knocked out anyway? So, I mean, I suppose the sense there is that you always want to try and win the game for your country. But I feel like the fact that they didn't shut up shop, but you know what I mean. It felt like they started to say, okay, we're down a little bit, and we're going to, try and just creep our way home. And I think that lost their momentum. And then suddenly Rashid Khan gets Mamadullah, cleans up Rashad the next ball. Horrendous shot, by the way. And, Afghanistan went in front on DLS, and, it was sort of a slow death, I guess, for Bangladesh from there. It felt like they could get there, but yeah, I really think they'd lost too many wickets early on because they were chasing, and then suddenly it became really tricky. Are we done? Are we out of?
Well, I want you to ask me what I think of the 4 semi-finalists, how I think the tournament's gone.
Well, Raj, as you said, what do you think of the 4 semi-finalists? So, because we are going to get South Africa versus Afghanistan in this game, and look, I mean, on paper, this looks like a game that South Africa, should win, I suppose. But again, I talked before about the pitches. Afghanistan have played on this pitch before. They know what a good score is going to be. I think the really interesting thing is going to be how Gurbaz backs up from this, because, nice little innings from him. Although, I still kind of wonder if Afghanistan could have got more. I think Rashid Khan talked about them being 15, 20 runs short. Again, for them, it seemed like they built a nice platform, and then every time they tried to accelerate, it was quite tricky for them to get going. They'd lose a wicket. But so I don't think that by any means they should be underestimated going into this game. But they've got potential question marks about Gurbadin, whether he's going to be fit after his knock during the bowling innings for them, knocked on the knee. And I think they've got about 36 hours between their games, so that they've got to change. You've got to get on a flight, I think, jump to the next situation. And then, we've got weather and things. So I think they are the side that, unfortunately, have the trickiest part of this situation, even though it was clearly so exciting for them the scenes when they won that game were just fantastic. And they've been a story, and what a story it would be if they continued further in this tournament.
Yes, and you left off the other bit of adversity, the Gulbadin injury as well. We need to see how he pulls up for the next game with all the travel. We need some of those skins, compression stuff.
Very tight after that.
The interesting thing here is that I feel like from a mental approach to this, Afghanistan have the ascendancy here, because they don't actually. There's no pressure on them to win this game against South Africa. Everyone is expecting South Africa to win this. South Africa have the weight of all these white ball tournaments where they haven't got past this stage, weighing them down. I feel like South Africa do have a lot more pressure on them to actually win this game, and I feel like just watching Afghanistan play this tournament, when they've played the bigger teams or teams that they, perhaps should have lost to, or the bookmakers thought they should have lost to, they've played really freely. They've played openly. They haven't, there hasn't been the tight sphincter that we've seen with other sort of teams that have really sort of bottled it. They've played with freedom all the way through. Their batsmen are in form. Their bowlers are in form, topping the charts. I think there's 3 batsmen in the top 7 or so, and I think sort of 4 to 5 are all sort of wicket takers. They've got 3 wicket takers in the top 7, and there's a lot of tying going on through there. So look, they're in form. They don't have the pressure. Why not? We could see an upset here. Dare to dream. I definitely dare to dream for Afghanistan here. It would be a great narrative for the 2020 World Cup, I think.
Yeah, look, very, very cool for like we said before, one of these sides is going to make it through to the final. And I mean, I guess finally from me on that, like that Gulbadin injury is the key one for me, because he's just so crucial to their batting lineup. As I said earlier in the show, the way that they've been able to pinpoint what you need on each particular surface, it's really been down to him and Ibrahim getting that start. And in quite a few games, they've been 60 for none after 10. Maybe you'd look at that and go, they're a bit behind par. And then that mean they didn't manage to in this game, but in most games they've then been able to go, okay, from 11 to 15, we're going to start accelerating. And then all the guys that are more all-rounder types, Amatsai, Gulbadin, Rashid Khan, can come in at the end and swing the willow and get us up to what we need to be. Like I said, didn't really work out tonight in terms of the batting, but Gurbatz's contribution of 43, even though I think I saw it was one of the slowest T20 innings of that length for quite some time, or at least in a World Cup or an international.
Yeah, striking at 78.
Yeah. So it's so crucial. Those runs proved so crucial. So yeah, whether he's available, I hope for his sake, it looks like a knock to the knee rather than something muscular or anything like that. So yeah, at the time of recording, we have no idea. But he was in tears. He was up on one of the coach's shoulders at the end of the game, being carried around. So I would expect that it's hopefully it's a big game for all those Afghanistan players. So yeah, we hope that he can be there. Any final words before we finish up the show for tonight?
Just on the sort of the 4 teams that made it through, I think we were talking about this pre-show, and I think that probably the 4 form teams, or I'm going to say the best teams that have performed in this tournament, have probably made it through. Australia, look, unfortunately, they left their destiny in another team's hands, and it got taken away from them. That loss to Afghanistan in that Super 8 stage has cemented their fate there. And if they had won that game, it wouldn't have mattered, this game that we just watched today. So, look, you can't fault these 4 teams that have made it through. A lot of the times when we talk about this tournament and the format, the question is, are the best teams going to make it through, or is there going to be a little bit of luck that falls one way or the other? And there has been a bit of that, but I think largely the teams that have deserved to go through each stage have. So we've got the best 4 teams, and look, we could see some fairy tales if we have the first semi-finalists get through to the final and put on a good performance.
Yep, 2 unbeaten teams, 1 on each side still left in this tournament. So yeah, fairy tales could be there, and yeah, like the other side, the other 2, England, Afghanistan, it would be quite the fairy tale if they come in, and England obviously trying to go back to back after winning it a couple of years ago. So yeah, very, very much to play for over the next few days. At the Top Order podcast, we will be back after those semi-finals to review those games, look ahead to the final. But I think that will do us for tonight. Thanks as always for listening. If you want to help us out, make sure you do all of those good things, like and share and subscribe, and it really does make a big difference to help get our content out there. But yeah, we'll be back later on in the week, and until then, look after yourselves and have a great week.